Running your e-commerce brand during a recession or just when things aren't seeming right for the economy can be a very scary and turmoil-filled period. Nobody really likes to deal with it, but unfortunately what's happening in the world right now, especially within the United States and how the markets are performing right now, how the economy is looking, it does look like we are basically going towards a recession, and depending on when you're watching this video, we might already be in a big recession. So exactly what do you do in a time period like this? How do you handle your e-commerce brand? How do you continue to at least get sales coming in profitably or possibly grow when everybody around you is penny pinching and trying to basically make their way throughout this and survive? Now, before we actually start talking about exactly what to do during a turmoil-filled period like this, it's important to understand if things really are as bad as they seem. And if you take just a quick look into the stock market just within the United States, you will be able to see that things aren't as good as they used to be just a couple of months back. And when the stock market like that starts to go down, people start to panic and they basically start to think the end of the world is here. So naturally what they will do is they will stop spending as much money as they used to do previously. And if you have been following a retail brand like Target, you will know that their projected sales during Q2 and early Q3 have been very low, basically lower than what they had predicted. And because they order way too much inventory, a lot of items, especially in Target, are going on sale. So this is kind of like a clear indicator as to what's happening out there in the economy and how these things are going to start affecting e-commerce, because unfortunately, even though we sell online, these things affect our sales tremendously. And you might be thinking that those people just selling within the United States are going to be the ones impacted, because not every country has a bad period right now in terms of the economy, and not every country is in a recession at this moment. But unfortunately, when the US starts to go in a downfall, because the US economy is considered to be one of the biggest and strongest economies out there, other countries and other spending behaviors often follow and mimic what's happening within the United States. So if things are not looking too good right now within the US, chances are your campaigns running to other countries are going to be directly impacted. So again, depending on when you're watching this video, the effects of this recession may have already started to show on your e-commerce brand. But here are some of the things which I personally believe will start to happen if they haven't already. And some of these things have already started to show right now in the e-commerce brands I'm handling under my Google Ads agency, Yoro Marketing, which if you're doing $30,000 or more in sales and you want some help scaling your brand to the next level with Google Ads, go on to my website at yoromarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how I can possibly help you get through this turmoil-filled period and continue to scale. But I'm seeing these effects on these brands as well as my own e-commerce brands. Number one effect, sales are starting to go down. A very unfortunate thing, but when people don't really have money to spend, they start spending this money only on the essentials. So if you are an essential e-commerce store where you're selling things like baby diapers or just household stuff which people cannot survive without, then you're probably gonna be okay during this recession-filled time period. But if you're like 95% to 99% of other e-commerce brands out there and you don't just sell essentials, but you sell maybe things like fashion, high-end jewelry, automotive stuff, etc., which people can live without, you are gonna start seeing a heavy drop in sales. And this drop is a little bit of a bigger drop than you would imagine compared to a normal drop that just happens once in a while. So let's kind of rewind a bit with this drop in sales and kind of understand where this drop would eventually come from. So like I mentioned earlier, during a turmoil-filled time period like this, people stop spending as much. They only spend on the essentials. So what that means is people will stop searching for main buying intent keywords like buy this or buy that. And let's take, for example, a 3D printer. If a lot of your sales were coming from keywords like buy 3D printer or 3D printer for sale, etc., during this recession time period, a lot of people would just stick to a normal 3D printer or maybe go to a library to print out whatever they want, or they might not just do things which involve a 3D printer during this time period, again, to save money. So what would happen is naturally the number of impressions for that given keyword would start to diminish and basically go down very quickly, because the number of people that once were searching for buy 3D printer or 3D printer for sale has started to lower and lower. And this kind of starts the snowball effect, because now after the impressions start to lower, what your algorithm and what your Google Ads campaign will realize is that there's not enough people searching for buy 3D printer or 3D printer for sale. And as a result, the algorithm will start spending your ads less. The algorithm will start having issues fully spending your ad budget for those given campaigns which you have running, which means your ad budget without you going in and doing anything will start to lower. So for example, if 3D printer campaign was spending about $50 a day because it had 100,000 impressions, now because the impressions got cut in half, campaign will stop spending $50 per day and might now only start spending about $25 to $30, maybe even $40 per day. So that is step number 2 of this recession, which is ad spend starts to drop, which now brings us to the third step, because again, this is the snowball effect. Because your ad spend has started to decrease, now most likely you will also start getting lower amount of clicks on that campaign and then lower amount of people on your website. Again, just because it's getting shown to lower amounts of people, now Google needs to get as many clicks as possible. But because there's only half of how many people there were in the market before, it's gonna probably get half of the number of clicks it used to get you before. So this means your clicks will go down, and most likely, if those impressions which are currently still in the market also are trying to save money and maybe they're just window shopping, your CTR will also start to go down. So as you can see, one after the other, things are just starting to get impacted, and by this time, your CTRs have started to drop along with the number of clicks your campaigns were once getting. But we're not done there yet, because now, because your CTR is starting to drop, you're gonna have much lower CTR. So for example, if it was a CTR of 1% before, your quality score was probably like a 7, 8, 9, or even 10 out of 10. But now, because your CTR dropped from 1% to a 0.5, 0.4% very rapidly, Google is gonna think that there are some issues going on with your ad, and it doesn't really realize this right away, that there is some issue with the economy itself, because again, there's not people sitting behind a computer screen handling all of these things. It's just the algorithm basing things off of the data that it's getting. So if it bases off of the data what it just saw right now, what it's gonna do is it's just gonna assume that your ads are bad, so it's gonna drop your quality score from a 7, 8, 9, 10 to maybe a 3, 4, 5 or so. And because you have a very bad quality score now than compared to before, Google is just gonna assume that you are not providing the users the right kind of experience. So this is again gonna trigger the next part of the snowball effect, which is when your CPCs will start to skyrocket. So it might go from 50 cents to 60, 70, 80 cents and so forth. And I'm gonna take you guys into a Google ad account right on my screen here. This is a personal ad account to kind of illustrate this a bit further, so you guys know how CPCs basically go up and down and how the ROAS is impacted during this time period. So right here on my screen is actually my own ad account that for the store I've been running since 2019, has been very, very profitable during this time period, but it has seen a thing or two in terms of economy changes, and so all sorts of stuff like that. So now if we change the time period to all time, once it loads up, you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. So as you can see right here, I'm looking at the overall cost, average CPC, purchases / sales, and the ROAS in total for this all time period. So if we just kind of remove the sales and the cost and just look at the ROAS and the CPCs, we can see how the CPCs and the ROAS kind of work together. So first quarter of 2020, everybody was literally shopping at home, so that's why the conversion value over cost was a 9.48, and the CPC was only 22 cents for this entire account. Over the next few quarters right here, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, the CPCs actually started to drop, but the ROAS did also start to drop, simply because again, more and more people were selling during this time period, and we were kind of entering Q1 of 2021, which is when things were sort of starting to go back to normal. But as things started to go back to normal and Google's algorithm started to understand this, you can see what happened to the CPC. So third quarter of 2021, fourth quarter, CPC started to go much, much higher, and ROAS started to dip for this ad account. So this is exactly what happens when there's a big change in the overall economy. And the major change here was just people going back to normal life, just shopping outside again as usual. So the overall demand was decreasing for online sales. So that's what I started to notice. And then Q1 of 2022, CPCs dropped just a bit, but ROAS did increase during this time period. And again, we're in second quarter of 2022. Again, same issue right over here. CPC is dropping because I'm implementing some of these things, which I'll be telling you guys about very shortly. But this is exactly what you start to see when there are economic changes out there in the world. So CPCs does naturally start to go up, but that also means your ROAS will most likely start to diminish in a perfect world. And that's exactly what we see during this time period. Because think about it, if you're paying more per link click, you are basically paying more to get a person on your website, and that means your cost is going up. But that doesn't necessarily mean the person that is going on your website is a higher buying intent audience member, is basically going to purchase from you or not. So that means there's a very good chance the ROAS might actually drop. And ultimately, what does this mean for you? That just simply means, in simple terms, your sales will start to drop. So if we look at the sales number right over here, as average CPC went up, sales did definitely start to diminish, and that's just what you kind of have to deal with. It's just like a byproduct of having to deal with high CPCs, and basically a byproduct of having to deal with a recession. But that was a lot of information, I know, but let's get to the juicy part, which is how do you deal with all of this stuff? Exactly what do you do? Do you just end up basically not advertising during this time period and just kind of go watch Netflix or something, or do you actually take actionable steps which can let you go and further grow your business? And of course, if you're my follower, you know that I'm gonna be telling you a few things that you can be doing to kind of battle this, and what I will be doing myself. So thing number one, and this is very important for you to kind of analyze, doesn't matter if you're running a real e-commerce brand or if you're just trying to kind of basically play around and see how things are. You want to identify what your main goal is. Is your main goal right now to get more sales, or is it to maintain profits? Because these two things lead you to very, very different strategies and to very different results. So you want to make sure that you answer this question for yourself. And I'm going to be telling you what to do in either scenario. But let's start off with strategy number one, which is basically the first answer of increasing revenue during this time period. So exactly what do you do if your main goal is just to kind of maintain the sales and possibly increase revenue, and you're not really worried about the profits? Here is what you should be doing. You should be keeping the budget same for your campaigns regardless of what is going on right now. But if you are noticing a very, very big drop in ROAS, you should go ahead and lower the bid that you have for if it's a standard shopping campaign, or possibly increase the target ROAS percentage by about 5% to 10% every 4 to 7 days. This is step number one of the strategy of dealing with the recession. So for example, if we go inside this shopping campaign right here, and this is a smart shopping campaign, look at the bids right over here and all of that stuff, we can see that it is running at a target ROAS of 307%. Let's say in the next 7 to 14 days, it just doesn't perform as I want, and I'm seeing this consistently. My next step would be to start basically increasing this target ROAS percentage by 5% to 10% every 4 to 7 days. So that means if I open up my calculator right over here, if we multiply 307% by just 0.05, which is 5%, we see that the answer is 15. So that means we would increase the target ROAS from 307 to 322, and you can either round up or round down, it's up to you, but that's exactly what I would do. If it was standard shopping and if my bid was, for example, 50 cents and I'm not really getting the sales that I want, I would start by decreasing my bids by 5% to 10%. So 0.50 times 0.05 is about 0.025. If we subtract 0.50 from there, we get 0.47. So my bid for my campaign now would be 0.47. So that's how I would kind of go about this. This is the first step to really battling the recession. Just start to lower your costs in terms of the bids. Don't necessarily just go in and lower the budget. So I'm just going to keep it at $70. I just want to kind of do some damage control here and just lower the bids or increase the target ROAS to make sure I'm not losing too much money, so I can continue to get the same amount of revenue. And you want to do this every 4 to 7 days as necessary. But you don't stop here if you want to kind of maintain your revenue, because now your next step of the strategy is to go out and launch more campaigns. And I can tell you there's a lot of different campaigns you can play around with, but I highly recommend, if I had to put it in order of greatest importance right now to least important, I would say start off with shopping campaigns, specifically maybe a performance max campaign or a smart shopping campaign if you don't already have one, and go from there. So that's kind of what I would go with. And once you have a performance max campaign running, shopping campaign running, then go into search campaigns, display campaigns, discover, and also at the end video campaigns. I have videos for every single one of these besides YouTube campaigns, which you can check out on my channel, so make sure to watch those videos. But this is what I recommend for you: have at least one campaign type per campaign and really try to scale that way, because it is not a smart thing to just rely on one given campaign during a recession, because anything can happen during a recession for that given campaign. Things will be up and down tremendously. There might not be too much consistency. So that's why you want to kind of broaden your scope and just have more campaigns running during an inconsistent time period like this. But one tip I will give you is make sure you're relying more on smart based bidding and smart shopping campaigns. And that's simply because during this time period of turmoil, there's a lot of ups and downs with new competitors coming in, old competitors leaving, new market share, new audience types, etc., etc. And you don't really want to kind of think that you are too smart and you can handle bidding by yourself and just know the right bids, because bids fluctuate heavily during a time like this. Today the bid might be 25 cents, tomorrow it might be 50 cents. So let a smart shopping campaign decide this for you, because again, it's smart. It decides based off of the algorithm and based off of the signals it's getting in the back end. So that's the next recommendation I really have for you. Focus more on smart bidding and smart shopping campaigns, which brings me to the third recommendation, and that is rely more on retargeting via search campaigns and also via shopping campaigns. Now with the standard shopping campaign, if you go within the audiences section, you have the ability to target remarketing audiences via observation. So this just simply means Google is going to observe this audience and try to target those people if they come in, or similar people to those. So you want to have that within the standard shopping, and if it's smart shopping, it already does that. You just want to make sure that you have those audiences created within the audience manager section of your Google Ads account. For search campaigns, just launch a remarketing dynamic search campaign, or just a dynamic search campaign in general, targeting cold traffic and warm or hot traffic. Either way works. But in addition to that, you really want to be adding more products, because this is not a time to just sit back and relax. If there has been a time to kind of put your head down and work, this is the time, because if you sit back and relax, pretty soon your products are going to die out, because Google is just not able to find the right kind of audience for them, or the audience for those products that you once had that were successful just died out due to the recession. So what you would want to do is consistently add new products. Even if you're a real brand and if sourcing is hard for you, try to find a way to source these products and just consistently add new products, because again, there is no better time period to add new products than a time period right now. But that is pretty much it as to what the strategy should be if you're trying to maintain your revenue or increase it during a recession. Again, don't go too crazy. Keep things very simple. Just try different things out. Just see what works for you. Again, if this is too much work for you and you would rather get help, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and book a free call with me where we can work together on these things. Always make sure to focus on the profits as well, because again, no matter how much you want to grow your revenue or sales, it's also important for you to know what your numbers are and if you're profitable or not, because we don't know how long this bad time will last for e-commerce, especially if the recession has already started. So because of that, I don't recommend that you focus too much on scaling. Try to just not rock the boat during this time period and just keep things steady if you can. And if you can get scale out of this, then be sure to do that as well. But this brings me to the second kind of people who basically don't want to focus too much on revenue and scale during this time. They would rather just focus on profit. So during a time period like this, here's exactly what you should be doing. Number one, for these people, you should definitely be lowering your budgets by about 10% to 20% every 4 to 7 days. Don't really focus too much on the bids and target ROAS, but you should definitely do that as well if you notice that you are overspending right now and you're really unprofitable. Lower your bids and budgets there, and then once you're hitting your budget levels, then start lowering your budgets by 10% to 20% every 4 to 7 days, especially if you're not really getting the sales that you want. So that's the first step of this strategy, which brings me to the next step, which is again, launch more shopping campaigns and search campaigns. But for these kinds of people, I don't necessarily recommend you kind of dip your toes in other campaign types like dynamic, discovery, YouTube, etc. Just focus on what's working, in this case, shopping campaigns. So maybe launch performance max, smart shopping, and also maybe a search campaign, but don't do too much of that. And also kind of keep it based around a strategy. So don't just go around launching random performance max or random smart shopping campaigns. Have a strategy around it, maybe certain winning products inside the smart shopping, or maybe certain losing products, and go from there. But again, for you, also depend more on Google's algorithm. So don't go around trying to launch standard shopping, or don't go around trying to do manual bidding, manual CPC, etc., because it's not really the right time to do that during a down period like this. So make sure you're focusing more on smart bidding like target ROAS, target CPA, etc. Also on smart shopping campaigns, just set a target ROAS percentage and let the campaign run. In this period, I don't recommend that you just uncheck that box, because it might be a little bit too risky for you to do that. But in addition to that, make sure to rely more on retargeting, because during a time period like this, a lot of your sales will be made through retargeting, and I actually recommend you spend a lot of time making your retargeting campaign. So retargeting with search, shopping, also probably doing Facebook, Bing, etc. Something I do for my Google Ads agency clients under my agency, again, Euro Marketing. But definitely something you need to keep in mind during a low period like this. Focus more on remarketing, which brings me to the next step, which is be sure to add more products and have a strategy around launching these campaigns. So segment these products out a certain way, certain profit margins, certain categories, etc. Don't just go crazy trying to launch whatever you want to launch. Keep it very systematic. Watch some of my old videos as to how I recommend launching these campaign types. But again, for these people, focus more on preserving profits. So if you want to preserve profits, you don't necessarily need to launch a bunch of extra stuff. It's more about cutting costs during this time period. So what I recommend is just cutting your cost with your campaigns, not anything else that you absolutely need to have, especially if you're getting some kind of help. I do recommend you kind of invest in courses or just invest in knowledge during this time period, or any types of extra help, because that is the best investment you can make to continue learning about this time period and continue becoming better, because this is again the best time where you're not really trying to scale too much. But some key pointers to keep in mind regardless of which category you're within. It is definitely a scary time, and I'm going through it as much as you, but you want to understand that those who keep pushing through are the winners that come out at the end. So don't think of this time as the perfect time to end your Shopify store or sell it, or just, step back and focus on things that make you happy, because this might be a difficult time period for a lot of people, but this is where if you focus and you just work and do the things that work, you will come out at the end in a much better situation. So continue and don't give up during this time period. And in addition, don't give up on the market share, meaning don't cut your budget severely just because you're maybe unprofitable right now, or you have been for the last 1, 2, 3 weeks. Just let it run, just let it optimize, and just make the decisions necessary based on the data that you're getting. Don't shut off your campaigns completely, because if you shut them off, then they have to kind of re-optimize and get back to the level they were at before, which is not a good thing to have during a low period like this. But definitely rely more on Google's smart bidding options, smart shopping campaigns, etc. Don't think that you are smart enough to determine the bids during a time period like this, because again, they're going to fluctuate heavily. And of course, most important of all, rely more on retargeting, rely more on launching audiences within your shopping campaigns, which are remarketing audiences, and then choosing observation, because this is basically the best way to go and just not lose too much money during the long term. But again, if you're doing about $30,000 or more in sales and you need some help scaling your e-commerce brand further, go on to my website at euromarketing.com and book that free call with me to see how I can possibly help you scale your e-commerce brand to the next level. But if you found any type of value in this video, destroy that like button and destroy that subscribe button, and I will see you in my next video.